Hey there, Andrew Houston here from Prof for Contractors with another no bullshit podcast for all you guys, all you rock star contractors out there. I've got Nate from the Essential Craftsman that's going to be on this podcast, and we're going to go deep into the importance of making sure that you're leveraging social media, making sure you're leveraging your image, making sure you're leveraging your brand to address a lot of the biggest problems out there, from hiring, from finding and landing great customers, and so much more. So we'll see you on the flip side. Until right now, this very moment, contractors have always been on their own, not as tradespeople, but being alone and knowing how to take their business to the next level. They call us working class, they call us blue collar. They say that we don't have the smarts to become the business owner that we're meant to be. That is such bullshit. You have the ability. You're more than any of that. The question really is, where do you get the insights that you need specific to contracting to systemize your business so you can get your profits to pay for your freedom? I'm Andrew Houston. I'm going to show you how to make more profits, how to get more control, how to get more freedom in the simplest, quickest way possible without any of that bullshit. Welcome to the No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. Listen up, level up, and if you learn something, like the video, subscribe to the channel, change your business, change your life. All right, everybody, welcome to another No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. I got my man here, Nate, Essential Craftsman. He's going to talk to you guys a little bit about what they're all about. But, Nate, you and I was just on your podcast just not even that long ago. And, I had a great experience, tons of value that you bring to, all your members and people that are subscribers to your channel. We're going to talk a little bit today about aspects of social media. We're talking about aspects of some of the biggest challenges that are out there for contractors. And Nate, you've got a lot of great insights and things of that nature. But before we go any further, let's talk about who's Nate. What are you guys all about?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. And
sure,
I guess as way of background, in case your listeners aren't familiar, we have a YouTube channel called Essential Craftsman. We have a podcast that supports it, but the channel's primarily focused on my dad, and I will film and help produce content where he's showing and teaching the things he's learned over his career as a contractor. Now, being his son, I've been working with my hands my whole life. And I've actually, for a lot of time, operated in almost like a gray area in contracting. I was fixing and flipping houses myself for years. And that's kind of a gray area because I don't have a customer. A contractor is, working for someone else. When you're fixing and flipping, you are the contractor and the customer. So I actually really enjoyed that business because customers are one of the, I'll say, fussiest parts, or one of the fussy parts of being a contractor, and you don't have that in the same way. But anyways, I came to this part of my career, my business in real estate, where I was working on a deal that was taking a long time, like a couple years, for a building permit and zoning variances and these things that I was kind of new at. And so I had time on my hands where I didn't want to start other deals because, I didn't want to bite off more than I can chew. So I started making videos with my dad, just basically thinking, what's the worst thing that could happen here? I knew he was extremely intelligent, lots of experience. He's just lived in a small town. So I always kind of thought, man, if people knew he was in Southern Oregon here, able to make all these neat things, blacksmithing in particular is one of his aspects of his business that has grown. And it's pretty unique, the things he can make. So I was thinking, man, people all over in LA and Jackson Hole and New York would have him making things for their places. So we started making videos and I was thinking that's where it would maybe go, just to help him get some more customers. But kind of quickly we realized that the demand for just quality educational content was much higher than the demand for any type of product. So basically we kept making videos, and that's more or less still what we're doing today, and trying to make educational quality content, both for contractors, but also I'd say like aggressive weekend warriors, the guys who have a day job. Maybe they've got skills on a computer or engineering or something, but they really like working with their hands, and they really respect the trade knowledge, and they want to kind of learn it firsthand from a pro. So we make content focused for those guys.
So when you're talking about content with the Essential Craftsman, you're talking about actual providing skill sets to tradies. Is that correct?
Right?
Like,
that's really it. I'm always
hands-on.
thinking, hands-on. I'm thinking a lot of times about a young guy who gets a job somewhere who maybe doesn't have background with basic tools and kind of the questions. What do I do here? How do I do these kind of more basic things? Honestly, it's a lot of things that I myself learned, and I kind of remember when I learned them. When I picked up some of these tricks from my dad, and I remember light bulbs going off, and so I kind of will often think back about when did I learn something, and probably if I learned it when I was 25, there's probably other people who haven't learned it yet either. And so even if it seems basic to a contractor or someone who's been doing it for years, that doesn't mean everybody knows it. So time to explain some of those more basic things in a way that everybody can soak them up.
And the value that you guys have brought, it's I think a good representation of your success is your followers. Like, you guys have exploded as far as your subscribers and people watching on YouTube. Tell us about like how many people you got watching you, and like tell us a little bit about that journey, that almost like the hockey stick bell curve.
It's really wild. Anytime we're used to working with our hands, and you kind of can see the amount of work you got done at the end of the day, and it's kind of linear. How many hours and you work, you can predict about how much work you get done. On the internet, it's a totally different world because things can spread and be shared and expand that you have nothing to do with, that can grow your audience or your video or your reach by 100-fold while you're sleeping. And that happened to us. We had a dozen videos up, and I remember going to bed one night a little bummed because I felt like we had been making good videos and nobody was watching them. They got like 15 or 20 video or views per each video. And I went to bed one night, and my phone started like vibrating, from people subscribing and joining our channel because of a couple videos we put up. And it had nothing to do with me. I woke up in the morning and we had like 5,000 subscribers overnight.
Wow, overnight?
Yeah, overnight. What happened? Someone shared a video on Reddit, and people thumbed up it, and it kind of went viral. There's a lot of like tiers for how viral things go, but believe me, when you go from like 100 subscribers to 5,000, it's really a crazy feeling, and it's super exciting. And so that happened to us a few times. If I had to attribute it to something, I would say obviously my dad being just extremely skilled at communicating and teaching, and very likable and charismatic. So that's something. But also, it sounds silly, but just by making the videos, taking the time on, like, it's almost like speculation, because it does take time to make videos. You don't know if it's going to be worth the effort or what's going to come from it, but you do it anyways. And you almost have we try to keep our expectations low about who all is going to like or watch this. But if you focus on making good videos or good content, then we found that the audience will find them, and they'll get there. And so that happened. And that was years ago, but that's happened a few different times. And now our audience is over 1 million subscribers, hundreds of millions of views, people
That's
all
amazing.
over the world, and, hundreds of thousands of comments and emails. And it's really amazing how it's grown. And like I said, really the only thing we had to do with it was trying to make the best content we could as often as we can, and just kind of letting the computer and the internet do the rest.
Well, you know what? Congratulations to you guys for having that kind of success, and and to your dad, and being able to get that reach out there, because you're literally helping people. I mean, everybody that's subscribing to you and that's watching you, they're watching and spending time with purpose, right? They're digesting this information that you guys are providing. So that's hats off to you, right? On that note, let's just talk about, like, we've got these contractors, right? Like, here we are at the No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors. There's a lot of synergy between what you guys do and what we do. Very similar audience. With the topic of social media, shooting videos, getting yourself out there. Let's talk a little bit about contractors using this technology. I mean, things are going great over here at the No Bullshit Podcast for Contractors, having a great time. Our reach things are exploding, trying to bring great value similar to what you're doing. But let's talk about how can contractors use this? And even before we get into that, I think there's a lot of contractors that are hesitant to use these channels to promote themselves. What do you have to say about that, Nate?
I could understand why. Anytime you're putting yourself out there, there's some risk, and certainly opening yourself up for criticism. So I think to some extent, contractors are not interested in inviting what they might think of as like the complicating side of being online. And so fair enough. But in terms of, the potential and why they might consider it, despite, that aspect of it, you don't know what will come of it. And like from our experience, when we put a few videos up, it certainly wasn't with some master plan to have a business online and make money from it. But that's what it's turned into. This is our full-time job now, and it has been for like 4 years. And that, again, we didn't plan on that. That's what it's turned into. I don't know what it's going to turn into 5 years from now, but
Right.
I guarantee you it's going to be good and positive for me and my family. Contracting is, I'll say, like, the internet oftentimes rewards people and appreciates seeing new things and seeing something that you wouldn't see otherwise. And in the trades, if you, let's say, blow insulation in an attic or something, that's your job. That's just Wednesday. It's very routine and there's not much exciting for you. But you got to kind of remember that only a fraction of the people on the earth have seen that and know how that works and understand those machines and the material. And so you have an opportunity to create value and show people something they may have never seen before. And even things that are a little bit routine, like, let's say, like electrical work. Not that it's routine, but there's a lot of electricians out there. Well, there's no electrician, doing the exact jobs you're doing and showing the exact situation. And so the internet and creating content is, we have found that when you're creating something and showing something people wouldn't otherwise have a chance to see, there can be, great fruit from that. And some of the more, I'll say, like, glamorous types of content, like extreme sports or hunting, guys who are hunting, big bull elk. That's a more obvious example. Very few people get to see that on YouTube. You can experience that to some extent. But my point is that in the trades and as a contractor, you see things on a regular basis that not everybody else can. And that's an opportunity. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to hire a film crew. You don't have to buy a big camera. Our cell phones are so good and so convenient, and the software is so intuitive. And there's no threshold of quality that matters anymore on YouTube. In other words, it can be rough. Don't overthink it. Just show it in a way that works for you. And I think of it a lot like planting a seed. You don't know how big the tree will get. You don't know exactly what kind of fruit it will bear. But planting a seed's pretty easy, especially when you just kind of plant it and walk away. And so for me, I recommend to everybody, just put some content up.
It's totally agree.
Worst case scenario, you're going to learn some new skills. And we all know in the trades that the more skills you acquire, the more valuable you become.
Here's, I completely agree with what Nate is saying, everybody listening. And again, if you're on this podcast and, you're a contractor and you're like, man, I'm not going to change my ways. I'm just going to stick with what I've been doing. I'll be honest with you. You probably should jump off the podcast. Okay. This is all about you growing. It's all about, evolving. And, we had a little chat about this, Nate, like just prior to the podcast about our evolution. Every 5 or so years, we go through this massive change in ourselves and things of that nature. Well, I want you as you're listening in on this, I want you to think about this and Nate said it very well. Look at it from the eyes of your clients. Like, think about this just for a second. And it's not just clients. It could be clients, it could be suppliers, it could be potential prospects of people that want to come and work for you, or they're looking for a change. If you're not out there, okay, it's now a, how do I put it? It's almost a standard out there in the sense of it's become a way of communicating. Okay. And if you're not on these platforms, if it's YouTube or on Facebook or, Instagram or whatever, whatever platform that you choose, you're in essence not communicating at the level that you could. And again, you talked about people don't know what it looks like, from a spray foam perspective, like what happens behind the walls, or it doesn't matter what kind of trade you are. And it's almost like you want to make the invisible visible.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think that's right. And it's one aspect you could think about, just the average, I'll say like hobby YouTube viewer, but that's not, it's more effective to think about your clients. Like for example, most contractors, when they go to like a sales call, or they're going to meet someone who's interested in a job, they can probably predict 95% of the questions that person's going to ask. They already know because they've answered them a million times, and they could go on autopilot and answer them.
Right.
And so right there, that's an opportunity. And this hopefully might make sense to some of these guys listening, because like I'll say, let's take another example, like a wood floor installer. There's questions that are really important that these people need to know. If you answer them in a video, and you can text them, watch these 5 videos, how long does wood need to acclimate before it's installed? And you would do it in their house. You might as well do it like on their phone, save yourself the time. Not only are you saving yourself the time of having to regurgitate that conversation for the 5,000th time, but when you arrive at their house, they already know you. They already feel like, oh, here he is. I've been hanging out with you for like 3 hours all morning, learning about wood floor, and there's some rapport and there's some trust. That it's not the same as actually knowing somebody, but it's not nothing. And so again, it doesn't take a lot of equipment or effort. It can be very simple, but I just don't see a lot of downside to trying that. If you're a contractor interested in making your life easy,
you want to become the trusted authority. And in order to become the trusted authority in your space, you have to be literally, here it is, seen as the trusted authority. Okay.
Yep.
Not just heard through the grapevine, not just, some sign on the side of a freaking truck, right? No offense, but that's back to the podcast. It's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot to share. Every contractor listening in on this, you have so many things. And back to what Nate said, you write down the list of the top 5 questions that people ask all the time regarding your trade. Okay. And address them with authority, and they're going to get to know you. Again, Nate, you were saying this, but people are also they're going to see your personality. They're going to see what you're about. Okay. They're going to see, how authentic you are. All right. So getting out there on social media is huge. And that's on the customer side. Let's talk about one of the greatest challenges that contractors are facing. I think I showed this on your podcast, this book, right? How to steal your competitors' tradespeople ethically, right?
Yeah.
Like on the hiring front, think about this just for a second. Imagine if, and we get our clients to do this. Okay. It's part of their process in shooting videos, right? It's a Friday. They've got this grill, little barbecue going. It's 12 o'clock. They got somebody, one of the lads filming it. They're cooking hot dogs and hamburgers for the guys. It's a Friday. Everybody's laughing, everybody's having a good time. Now you think about that for a second. If you're a contractor, right, and you're trying to look for people, when somebody sees that video, is that going to be an environment that they want to work in? And the answer is yes. Are they going to see that and go, wait a second, the freaking current employer that I have, all they do is just drive us, like they just drive us right into the ground. They don't freaking, there's no fun. There's no, no smiles. There's no taking time on a Friday just to shoot the shit and, have some hot dogs and like, how much does that cost? Nothing.
Right.
But right. Like Nate, you think about it. If you were to see a video like that, what would go through your mind?
I see those videos all the time, and I can think of 2 examples. Awesome Framers on Instagram. His name's Tim. I can't remember his last name, but he's putting content on Instagram, just short little clips. And I want to work for him because he's having a good time. Like you said, he's not doing the exact approach that I was talking about, of visualizing your client. he's just showing a good time on a job site and, having fun and playing music and little dancing. And I'm telling you, when his videos pop in my feed, it puts a smile on my face. And I guarantee you, if I lived in Seattle and needed a job, I would be beating down like the door of his truck saying like, please, can I work on your job site with you?
Mm-hmm.
And another example is, I think he's on TikTok, and I want to say Blue Collar Cowboy maybe, or Idaho Cowboy, Chal and CV. And they actually had a bad accident a few months ago, so they're kind of fresh on our mind. They had a guy get yanked off the roof. Crazy story. He's okay, but anyways, he puts videos on TikTok kind of the same way, just showing their crew, and they're all having a good time, and they got smiles on their face, and the culture just comes through. They're not elaborate.
It just comes through.
He's just holding up his phone. And another thing that I've seen people do that I think is so smart is showing the parts of their trade that they're doing, let's say, a good job on, not cutting corners. Again, not in this instance, not to think of getting new customers, but other tradesmen, when they see someone doing it right, it's almost like relaxing to think, oh, I would love to do it that way if my boss or somebody wasn't like, always like telling me I get whatever, 1 tube of caulk per per bathroom. If I would rather spend the money. And so when they see somebody doing a good job and using the right materials, taking a little extra time, a lot of times that's attractive because they're like, oh, I would love to be able to like do a better job on these things, but I got to do, 5 different calls in one day. So I don't know what to do. So I don't know. There's a lot of like benefit to thinking about your future employees or people you might want to attract.
Absolutely. And look, here's the thing, for those that haven't gotten the book yet, the whole principle behind it, one of the core principles behind it is the reality that most contractors, most owners of contracting businesses, and this is, the listener, you guys are listening in on this, you're driving in your truck, you're on a job site, you're at the office, and you're listening in on this podcast. The reality of the situation is that the environment that has been created for employees that work for contractors has been basically labeled as shit. Yeah. Okay. We're so behind in technology. We're behind in evolution in a lot of different cases. And one of the places is, you said it, Nate, is our culture, right? If we don't adapt to, I almost call it the evolving culture. Culture is evolving. The next generation that's coming through, they're not going to put up with, hey man, just work harder. Right. Hey man, suck it up. Hey man, we're not here for freaking, to have a good time. You're here to work. I'm going to tell you right now, if that is at all, if any of that is sniffed as part of your culture right now, and let's just talk about your current employees. When they sniff these other two, contractors, if they're in the area, I'm going to tell you, Nate, what do you think they would do?
Yeah, they're gone. They're
gone.
Yep.
They're gone, guys. Okay. So using social media, using video, don't overcomplicate it. But definitely it's had a big impact on your reach. It's had a big impact on, your YouTube channel. It's had a massive impact. If you think about how many people, a huge percentage of people that reach out to, Prof for Contractors have listened to this podcast, they've watched the video of us, right? Mm-hmm. So it's something that you definitely got to do. Onto a different topic, So Nate, if you're looking at some of the other big challenges that you see out there for contractors, what comes to mind outside of the hiring?
Hiring seems like the biggest, and we polled our audience, trying to keep track of this, and that's certainly one of the big ones. But there are contractors, and I guess it would depend on markets, but having trouble finding, maybe not finding work, but finding the right work, finding the types of jobs that you actually want to do, where you can actually, make some money and not torture yourself. I know a lot of contractors, like most of the stress can come from, one or two really kind of rotten clients and jobs you never should have taken in the first place. And you kind of get tangled up with somebody like that. It can really complicate things. And so I would say finding the right type of customers. And I would say the final thing is, maybe not the final, but maybe another one that's big is a lot of contractors, especially the ones who kind of come up through the trades of working with their hands and they have the trade skills, it's really difficult to put the tools down and to learn all the skills of running a business and letting somebody else do the job. Could you do it better? Yes. Is that still the most effective use of your time? Probably not. That is hard. It's hard for me. My business is a little different now, but I always have struggled with the same thing where I like working. I like the hands-on. And so I kind of find myself like getting sucked back to that side of it. Although generally speaking, it's not the best use of my time. So I think that's a challenge for some contractors is it limits your ability to grow and expand and I'll say make more money, but just have the life you want to live when you constantly find yourself back on the the first rung of the ladder of digging out the ditch or doing the install or something. So I don't know, finding a way to get to kind of solve all those problems is I'm always I really admire the guys I know who've accomplished that. In fact, one guy I'll mention, I really admired him. I knew him 10 years ago when I was in Arizona, and he started painting when he was like 16. And then eventually, followed this track, started his own business when he was like 19. And he just sold it I think I actually called him. I was going to try to go interview him and get a tour of his yard. I was like, hey, can I come check out your yard? It's like a massive painting outfit now. He had like, I don't know how many crews, probably 15 crews at any given time. And anyways, he sold his business, and I just admire this guy because when I knew him, he was, at that back part of the career. But here's a guy who could paint anything. He knew it all, but he had built this business that was, again, he was running the business, not running the paint sprayer. And I really saluted him. And it was cool to see this guy who transitioned over the course of a career. And again, now he sold the business. He couldn't be happier, and I'm happy for him. So I don't know. We all have to find the path of our own on that, but that's definitely the goal for me is to, a life well lived, a career that you're proud of, and maybe not doing like the hard manual labor when you're 60 plus years old.
Well, you know what? That's what Proffer Contractors does, right? It helps these guys get off the tools. It helps them become a champion CEO of their business, But with that being said, we chatted about this briefly, but every so many years, we sometimes go through like, I don't know, how did you describe it?
This is me. I'm on my third, I'll say reinvention, but
reinvention.
Yeah. Every like 4 or 5 years, like clockwork. And I'm kind of here right now. I find myself, not that my opportunities or business have like dissolved, but for one reason or another, I'm needing to like reinvent myself and my business, bring the skills that I've learned, like this toolkit of skills and tools, and figure out what's the most effective, productive way to utilize these tools. With Essential Craftsman right now, I know that we could continue making the same types of videos and keep doing the same thing. But my dad and I both have learned a lot over the last 5 years. We're more skilled, and it would be, how would you say that? We would not, it would be a disservice to ourselves to not try to learn and do better and expand. And so that's where we're at right now. We finished if any of your people listening have paid attention to our stuff, they know we finished our spec house. We built this house, beginning to end, soup to nuts, and filmed every day of construction.
Wow.
There's 141 videos. I think I have like 15 terabytes of footage. So if any of you people know about video, that's how much video I shot. I was running basically like 3 or 4 cameras all day, every day. And it was a great series, very instructional. If somebody watched this whole series, they would know a lot about how houses work. Well, anyways, that project's done. And so we are trying to figure out what is the next iteration or phase or transition. And I don't know exactly what that is. I'm in this process of taking all the skills and things I've learned and scratching my head and thinking, how do I apply these in the most effective way? I've also got 4 kids now. I didn't have 4 kids 5 years ago.
Oh, that's not a change, is it?
Yeah,
that's not a transformation, is it?
Yeah. So that's happening to me. And to be honest, I know in 5 years it'll happen again. And I
Right.
remember 5 years ago, I remember the exact moment when I kind of was dealing with this because I was having a conversation with this guy I just met, and we weren't super good friends. And so for some reason, I felt comfortable just like we were on this long drive together. We're good friends now, and I remember telling him, I kind of really opened up. I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I gotta basically stop doing this, and I could tell something's coming. I don't know exactly what it is, but I know something's coming. I just got to keep like chewing on. I was kind of like thinking these thoughts. And what was next was Essential Craftsman. I had no idea that I would be like making.
How do you, if you were to give a piece of advice, before we wrap up this podcast on this transition, like what would be a couple of things that you would, one or two things that you would suggest to help people go, maybe accelerate that transition or see it a little bit differently? Because you talked about, one of the biggest challenges being tradespeople that, they have this skill set. Like I say, it's the Gretzky. They're the Gretzky of their trade. They know it so well. They get off the tools. It's really difficult. You've gone through this transformation, more than once. What would be your advice as far as helping them sort of find that pathway?
A couple things. The first off, and this part comes a little more naturally to me than for other people. Like my wife, she's a little impatient. No, she's not impatient, but I'm able to be what I would say is strategically patient. In other words, when I know this transition's happening, it's easy to not quite panic, but feel like you got to do something now. I got to pull the trigger. I got to, buy this equipment that's going to help me get to the next thing, or sell this, or make some big decision, because there's some kind of peace that comes just in making a decision and moving forward. And I get that. But for me, I've found that almost like the longer I can process it and really chew on it, the correct thing almost presents itself to where it's like actually an easy decision. Because for me, after I kind of chew on it long enough and go through things, like the right answer is staring me in the face almost every time. And if I had tried to force a decision before it was ready, it's not, I might have missed the opportunity that came. Like with Essential Craftsman, I didn't, with hindsight, I can see what it turned into. But at the time, my wife was a little stressed. I was stressed too. What are we going to do? I was making these videos kind of thinking, well, again, no downside and taking some time. It's who knows what it'll come to. But by kind of just working on that and putting videos, eventually we kind of lifted our head up and we're like, oh man, actually these videos and making this content with my dad, I didn't realize it, but look at that. We just, I remember when we first got paid by YouTube, it was like $300 or something for a month. And that was a real light bulb, because I was able to do the math. Like, hold on a minute. If that's $300 for this many views, well, if we get some more views, maybe that would increase. And so that really was helpful for me to kind of not panic and just kind of think. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. In fact, I told my wife this whole year, really, I'm thinking about 2022 as a year of testing and gathering information, experimenting with, new videos, new types of content, new, maybe not opportunities, but just, I don't know, learning new things with Essential Craftsman. And I guarantee you, by the end of this year, probably much sooner, I'm not going to have a big question mark over what should I do next. It'll be pretty obvious, because one of these things that we've been testing and trying and working on will head and shoulders come above, the competition.
So, it's interesting as you're talking, it's, be patient, right? And be patient, but yet don't be stale. Like, if there's one thing that, as I'm listening to you, is you didn't stop moving. You're being patient, and trusting, hey, you know what, this is going to work out. But you at least made some decisions to take action, to try something, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I should have mentioned that, because even right now, I think I have 3, and now I'm really like doing an ad for your business, but it's just the truth. I have, I think, 3 different consultants hired right now, giving me advice and helping me. I know that some of them I won't probably utilize the exact advice they're giving me, but I still need it. I need it to help process what's coming next. And so, no, I'm working harder than ever and kind of trying to learn and gather information, and I'm making it sound like we have something to fix, and that's not really it. It's just figuring out, what the next step is. That's
Exactly.
it's one of the things about, life and being self-employed is you can do anything, really anything you want to do, you can do it, but you definitely can't do everything. You have to kind of pick something and go a direction. There's only so many hours. And so making that choice is hard when you have a few good options, and there's an opportunity cost that at some point you got to decide. And so for me, yeah, getting expert advice, getting feedback. In my case, I've got a couple guys who are professionals who are kind of looking at it with me, and it's been really helpful. My dad also, of course, he's got a say in this, and so we're kind of working on this, figuring out, I wonder what the next most productive thing for us to do is going to
Well,
be.
here's the reality, right? You've heard this. I don't know who came up with this quote, but definitely somebody that played golf, right? Which is,
Yeah.
you can't see yourself swing, right? Like, you get up to the ball. It's important to have somebody else see you
Yeah.
swing, right? To have somebody from an outside perspective with a different set of lenses look at, what it is that you're trying to work on. And again, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got a problem, like you said, Nate. It's just, getting different set of eyes on things to look at it differently, having the trust and the patience. And at the same token, picking something, so that you're not like stuck, right? Like, pick something, make a decision. You're listening on this podcast, think about something that you want it to evolve, or maybe it is something that you want to fix. Get some other eyes on it, whether that's Prof for Contractors, whether that's, if it's even getting a different set of eyes from how are we going to get this, how are we going to build this house? And you go to, the Essential Craftsman's YouTube channel, and you actually look at something, and it gives you a different perspective. Do something, right? Not doing something is probably, I think, the worst thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
the opposite.
to do the same thing that's like not working and just sticking with it because that's all that's rough also.
That's right. And you said something, so there's a balance, right? You said something that's, I think, really important for the listeners is that you do have to take action, but you got to pick something, but don't try and pick everything neither. Right. Because that's like, a paralysis right there.
Yeah, that's right. You got to, unfortunately, I wish we didn't have to sleep. I wish I could live 10 lifetimes, but that's not how it is. You got to pick your highest and best option and then go at it, with vigor, and really kind of, once you pick something and once you make a decision, then, you don't take it easy. You got to go hard after that. And that's, for me, that's what's always kind of worked out. Luckily, I think just because of my dad, who he is, and my mom, I should give my mom credit too. My parents, I was raised to really value working hard. And I remember being a little kid and kind of learning like, oh, my parents really value hard work. So I would try to work hard to please them and to make them proud of me. And what happened was they would then like give me feedback like, hey, you're working so hard. That made me kind of, even in high school, identify my identity as like, I work hard. Like, other people are tall, other people are good readers. I can work hard. And I don't know if I necessarily was, but I decided I was. And that's really paid off, because now with whatever it is, whatever task is at hand, it's easier for me. And I really enjoy it. That maybe the downside is it's hard for me to get off the tools, but still it's a really great skill to develop, is just not being afraid of kind of getting in there and getting the work done, and not, waiting for the opportunities to come to you, but kind of really getting in there and experimenting, which, to bring it back to social media and videos and all that, it's work to put this content together, but I had a big change in my life when I started creating content as opposed to just consuming content. When I was in school and when I was younger, I spent a lot of time on the internet wasting it, just kind of absorbing videos and blogs and just absorbing content, consumption. And as soon as I started creating, it almost instantly, I don't say killed, but like my consumption went way down. I instantly started watching less, because at that time, where instead of consuming, I was producing. It's time at a computer, it's time at a desk still, but that is a really valuable trade to make. You're trading the I don't want to say lazy, but people can understand what I'm saying here. You're taking some time of your day where you might have been um, doing not much and using it to create. And anytime you're building, whether it's in the trades, but even if it's online, you're building content. There's satisfaction that comes from that. There's feeling of pride of making something creative and beautiful, even if it doesn't get a million views or you don't make money from it. But it's
input
it's
versus output, right?
Yeah, it's a meaningful part of life to create. And especially as builders and as contractors, that's what your listeners do. They build. They can look at a beautiful roof and respect it and appreciate it in a way that nobody else can. And once you start making content, you'll be able to appreciate that as well. And it's not the same, but there's something there, and I for me, that was a really valuable trade in my life when I started creating that content online as opposed to just consuming it.
That's awesome advice, man. That's seriously, like, it's great. It's the way that you describe it is really hits the nail on the head, right? Like, there's a lot of listeners right now that you're in the state of consumption. Like, you're just consuming. And there's value in that. But at the same token, right, getting yourself out there and being the creator of something is really the next evolutionary stage, I think, for most contractors.
Yeah, it really is. And it was, I'm glad I watched all that YouTube, because when I started then making YouTube videos, I kind of just, it was like in me. I knew what they should look like because I had watched a lot. I knew which kind of videos annoyed me. I knew which type of videos were satisfying and like fun to watch. And so it was I kind of knew like what to do. So if you got a listener who's on Instagram or something, or TikTok or any of these platforms or Twitter, there's that aspect of just, I don't say copying, but that's really what it is. I mean, we didn't invent
hacking.
Yeah, we didn't
ethically
invent
hacking
videos. Yeah, it's hacking. And like Larry Hahn was one of our influences, like everybody who is into framing and building. And I made a lot of videos kind of thinking, well, what would this look like if it was a Larry Hahn video or this old house, And so by all means, take your inspiration, take whoever you like, and do your best impersonation of that content. And it's at least a place to start. You will inevitably become your own. You'll do it your own way because everybody is a unique individual. So it's impossible to copy somebody exactly with this type of thing because everybody's so different. But it's a great way to start, is thinking, how would so-and-so show and tell this? And in fact, when I'm like narrating, and I don't do this very often, but I'm not as natural as my dad. He's a really gifted communicator. And a lot of times, if I'm even like a podcast or something like this, if I'm struggling, I kind of think, I filmed him enough to know, like, well, how would dad like explain this and go through it? And I just kind of imagine what the words he would say, and I kind of do my best to say them. And I'm so grateful for that. And eventually it's really helped me be able to find my own way to speak about it. And
well, you just did it, dude. So in wrapping up this podcast, you've given some great advice to all the listeners. This stuff works. Everybody, apply it, get started, don't stay stuck. Don't look for perfection. And I mean, if there's one last little piece of advice that you would say, Nate, what would it be?
I got to think here. I don't know. Everybody's so different. I really feel like there's something to, keeping your chin up, being positive. When you're in a transitionary phase, or when work is stressful or something's got to change, the default is for that to be like a scary and negative thing, because change is scary. But there's another side of that where there's excitement and there's energy when things are changing. And I know that making content online is not for everybody, but for those of you listening who kind of have an interest in it and think, I might try that, take this as your sign, like, to yes, try it, because just learning something new, just kind of getting your hands on a type of creating that's new will energize you and will introduce you to new thoughts and ideas you didn't have. Very little downside. I mean, almost none. If you have a phone, that's all the gear you need. You can duct tape it or
True.
zip tie it to a tree branch and just go. I'm really a believer in this. I don't know what the future will hold, but I guarantee you it's going to be full of people like you and I and your listeners occupying and taking over the entertainment space from all of these legacy outlets. And so we have the momentum. We have these situations. Like I said, you're seeing things and in places that very few people get to see. So if you can handle a camera on you while you work, give it a try. Very little risk.
Great
and you
advice.
don't know what the outcome will be. It could be good.
I love it. Okay, guys, that's another No Bullshit podcast for contractors. Take this advice, do something with it, take some action. If it's just the first step of just, grab your phone. If you want to just go shoot a video of yourself, in the closet, I don't care, but get started doing something with this. And, I think that also applies to anybody that's going through transition as well. Thank you so much for all your insights and advice, because it totally applies to these guys listening in. And we'll have you back here again, Nate. We'll see you on the flip side, dude.
Okay. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Thanks. Hey, rock stars, thank you for watching the No Bullshit podcast for contractors. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button. And if you're serious about growing and need help, click on the link below. Myself and my team would love to help and give you the necessary tools so you can take your contracting business to the next level. And remember, dominate, delegate, and deliver.